from the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight, talking about a very important topic, homelessness in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee. And we're talking with an organization that helps those experiencing homelessness and certainly knows a great deal about this issue. We are talking with people from Open Table Nashville. They are joining us via Zoom. And I believe we have Edward Kehoe. Thank you, Edward, for being here. And Cate. Thank you, Chase, for being here. Thank you both for being here via Zoom. And so there's a lot to talk about here. It's been Open Table has actually been in the news. There was some concern about the way some COVID money was being spent. I want to get into all of that, but let's start big picture first. What is Open Table, and how serious is the homelessness problem? And I'll have each one of you take that. Edward, can you take how serious? Where do we stand right now in Nashville as far as homelessness?
Thank you for asking. So Open Table is an interfaith organization. We focus on resource navigation as well as street outreach. So street outreach basically just means giving people the supplies they need to survive. And resource navigation and housing navigation essentially just mean navigating people through the housing process in order to help them thrive. Do you want to take the second half of that question, Chase?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really appreciate this question in terms of thinking about Nashville, because in some ways, the problem in Nashville is a microcosm of what's happening across the country, and in some ways it's really specific to what's happening here in Tennessee and what's happening in Metro Nashville. The way that we calculate or the way that the city calculates the severity of the homelessness issue in Metro Nashville is through something they call the PIT count, or the point in time count, which they do at the end of every January. Service providers go out and they survey people who are living on the streets to try to come up with an approximate number of how many people are experiencing outdoor homelessness. This number, however, has been critiqued by many service providers because it doesn't include people who are doubling up or people who are in jail, people who are in the emergency room, or people who fall into certain other categories that won't be taken into account on that specific night. So if you Google how many people are homeless in Nashville right now, it'll tell you that there's about 20,000. And Metro government will tell you that there are only about 900 to 1,000. We know that the situation in terms of homelessness is in constant flux, and so it's difficult to get an accurate reading on these numbers at any specific time. But it is a very serious issue, especially with all of the development happening in Nashville and with all the economic impact we've seen because of COVID. Homelessness is definitely on the rise.
Well, that's fascinating, Chase. So it comes down to, of course, how you count, when you count, how you count. And so that's a wide range there when you talk about what Metro would say and what, I guess what you believe. And so what is your sense, and you can each answer this, and I'll start with you, Chase. Are we seeing an increase, and how dramatic? What has COVID done to it? And what do you feel like the real number is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're absolutely seeing an increase in outdoor homelessness and in other forms of homelessness right now, not only from COVID, but from all of the economic development we're seeing happening across Nashville that's been happening for the last 10 or 15 years. I think those numbers are continuing to climb. I don't feel a need to assign some exact number. I do think it's probably closer to the 20,000 number, but I think the nature of homelessness probably resists us assigning some specific numeric value to that question.
And Edward, I'll ask you, I mean, do you think it's growing? What, if so, why? What are your thoughts on kind of the trajectory we've seen in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think one of the most important elements that we like to focus on at Open Table specifically is recidivism. The idea of people going into homes and then becoming homeless again once we've already housed them or once they've been housed before in their life before. It's something that we can't stop avoiding in the city. becoming the it city very recently, growing constantly. We're always chasing that magic dragon of having enough housing, and that's always going to be the end result until we take housing seriously and we actually truly have enough housing for everyone. We've always been aware that there isn't enough, and that is always going to exist until we actually obtain that correct number.
And Edward, let me start with you, and Chase, you can answer this too. Where are the those experiencing homelessness? Where are they? I mean, where would you say they're staying, sleeping? What are we seeing in Nashville as far as where those experiencing homelessness are? And I'll start with you, Edward.
Not to be overly dramatic at all, but maybe some drama is necessary for how severe this issue is right now. Camps, homeless people's camps, where they live, their homes, their neighborhoods, they are in a way under attack right now. We've seen an immense kind of displacement and destruction and end to a lot of camps here in the city. People who need homes, places to live, make do with what they're given. And as of now, in a literal sense and in a very figurative sense, they live in the cracks of our society. People make homes, places where they have to exist, sometimes in an alleyway up against a dumpster, sometimes in a doorway in a business or a park. Sometimes it's under a bridge. We don't like to disclose anyone's personal address or where one individual is, because just like anyone, you wouldn't want your address publicly posted on the news, I'm sure. But people make their homes wherever they have to.
Are we, and Chase, I'll ask you this, are we seeing more camps? They've certainly been in the news, and I'll ask about that in a moment, but are we seeing in say, parks, are we seeing more homeless camps?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Ben. This is a question that's really close to the heart of Open Table and a lot of people who work there. The short answer to the question is no, absolutely not. A lot of these camps that you see that are under attack from Metro government or whatever it might be have existed for decades. If you read the book that was just written by one of our coworkers, Lindsay Crinks, Praying with Our Feet, it discusses work that was being done under Jefferson Street Bridge all the way back in the early 2000s. And of course, everything that was just in the news with that this summer is just now kind of coming to a close. So the answer to your question, I suppose, is double-sided. In one way, we're seeing an increase in street homelessness, but this new interest in camps, people who are critical of camps like to act as if they are somehow new or they've never been there before, but in reality, it's a visibility question. And when certain people are talking, camps will be noticed, and when certain people are not talking, they won't be.
Interesting. Earlier this month, on November 11th, I'm reading a call to action from Open Table. It says, help us ask Metro Council to invest in housing, not the criminalization of homelessness. And this, well, I'll let you kind of talk about what that means, but I think what you're getting at here involves some of these camps. But I'll start with you, Edward. What was going on here? What do you mean by the criminalization of homelessness?
It is kind of baffling in so many different ways how simply existing in a specific place, unless you are a part of a certain tax bracket or if you aren't able to deserve to be there, how a lot of people may phrase it, or if you haven't earned your right to be there, can result in unnecessary criminalization. I can't tell you how many people walk into my office praying, hoping for housing, and certain felonies can result in them not being able to access certain resources in order to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, to use a an old term that maybe is a bit outdated for what we need to actually survive and have people get into homes. There's certain things like trespassing is obviously like the big one for lots of people who are in camps. That can definitely result in a issue for people who are just trying to exist in a space, and that can result in them committing a criminal act when they need somewhere to be. This also includes things like loitering. And for a lot of people who end up becoming homeless, who do not fit the mold of a productive society member, they end up having issues with police officers or business owners or maybe tourists who are coming to enjoy Nashville. And this can result in unnecessary conflict that would not have otherwise been there or is needed. And this can result in much larger situations that, again, just don't need to happen.
So this call to action from earlier this month in November said the council is trying to pass a resolution to appropriate $1.9 million in American Rescue Plan money, that's COVID relief money. They would go to metro parks for anti-homelessness infrastructure. And it says these funds would be used to purchase bobcats and cameras, surveillance cameras. Chase, how is that what you feel like was happening, and what was your concern there?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a concerted effort that we've been seeing over the course of the past 9 to 10 months, which is that there's a constant threat against existing encampments, even ones like Jefferson Street Bridge that have been around for decades, or other camps that have been in the news a lot lately. There's a conceded effort on the part of the city and on the part of some parts of the public to eliminate camps in certain areas. And the parks money that was requested was certainly requested to that end. It was focused on a park that has been in the news quite a lot lately. And that money was going to be used to purchase large bobcat equipment and surveillance cameras for camps, in order to continue this sort of propagation of the criminalization of homelessness. And the question that Open Table is always asking is, where are they to go? The mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force came out with a report 4 months ago that said that just for folks between 0 and 40% of the average median income, Nashville's 17,000 units behind in affordable housing. And if that's the case, if we're 17,000 units behind, and we're hearing that from the highest levels of our government, then what are people who are experiencing homelessness to do when people in the city tell them that they can't exist outside? There's truly a lack of options, and that means that the housing plan just becomes arrest and jailing for a lot of folks. Just the other night, I was out helping get folks into winter shelter because it was below 28 degrees, and one of the folks that I was getting into shelter was being threatened with arrest for trying to get warm in a hotel lobby. That's not an uncommon situation.
Now, I'm sure there are people that are watching.
Well,
and I'll ask. Yeah, I want you to. I'm sure there are people who are watching who are like, well, that I don't know if it's appropriate that they have tents and sleep in parks, and there's sanitary issues, and and so they are concerned when they see large numbers of people that are in a metro park, perhaps. If people are saying that, and I know they will, what do you say in response?
As they should be. This is a serious issue, and we should all be alarmed, and we should all be trying to help people. I think the larger problem is that we seem to always want to walk around the issue, and we always seem to be constantly chasing the problem down without ever properly addressing it. We can get into a myriad of solutions as to what that might be, but it's always important to remember that, like, the specific thing that you're trying to relate to, Ben, is when we're thinking about, like, okay, we need to broken window theory when it comes to solving crime. If there are small crimes happening here, there must be larger crimes happening there. And then trying to like push down on those small crimes will eventually result in pushing down larger crimes. What does this mean? Okay, we have lots of loitering and we have lots of trespassing happening here, something I was talking about earlier, happening at this park. How can we address this? Okay, we'll put in cameras. Cameras will deter people from doing crime. That doesn't actually work, right? I mean, if that were the case, then London, the city with the most cameras anywhere in the world, would have less crime. But cameras don't deter people from needing to exist in a safe space they determine as their home, correct? I mean, we need to create legitimate solutions. We need to get to the core of why people are here and why this is the safest place for them. And are we creating a structure and are we creating an environment where they can truly thrive? Bulldozers, cameras, unnecessary conflict will only result in more and more people being homeless for longer, and it's not a just and decent way to give dignity to people who are not aliens, but they're our neighbors, and we need to love them.
So the mayor sent out, this obviously was in the news a great deal, the mayor sent out a statement shortly after your call to action in early November, and he said the cameras are intended, his office said the cameras are intended to protect unhoused individuals by detecting and deterring possible criminal activity that victimizes unhoused neighbors who are already vulnerable, including drug sales. They've been used successfully in metro parks for years. It's unfortunate the nature and purpose of these information gathering visits, and that was taking councilmen out there, has been misinterpreted. Do you feel like these cameras protect unhoused, homeless, those experiencing homelessness? And Chase, you can take that.
No, Ben, absolutely not. I think that the central issue of this is that although intent is important, and we never want to demonize the intent of people who claim that they're acting on goodwill, and we hope that they are. But the case is that whether or not you intend for something to be harmful, it always can be. We were really concerned about that trip, that information gathering trip with Metro Council, because it was something that was going to make a spectacle out of our friends on the streets, and further the divide between Metro Council and encampments, and again was going to be sort of a deterrent from, or a buffer from, actually making decisions and causing solutions that we know are there, but we don't want to pay the high price of. The reality is that it's difficult to solve the issue of homelessness. It's difficult to house people. It's difficult to create more affordable solutions. But we know what those models look like, and if we buy into them, then we don't have to do things like information gathering, because we know that there are a great deal of people on the streets, right? Secondarily, what I would say is that the issue of cameras, while people might try to propose that they can be used to protect our unhoused neighbors, we always come from a trauma-informed perspective, and what we would say is that that lacks knowledge of the trauma that people on the streets experience. It lacks knowledge of the importance of an individual's privacy for them to feel safe and comfortable. And it assumes that just because a person is unhoused, you have access to their unfettered life. You should be able to create a spectacle out of them whenever you want. I wouldn't want people putting up cameras in my home and watching them all night long to make sure that my home wasn't being robbed, even if that was the only thing that they were trying to do. And so really the issue is that is not that there might be good or bad intentions. It's that it's not a trauma-informed perspective, and we feel that it's going to hurt our friends on the streets. And
lastly,
so that's why
before we go to break, and I start taking a bunch of calls we have. All right, so this all happened in November 11th. You sent this out. Open Table did. The mayor responded the way he did. So update us, where do things stand now? Is the $1.9 million going to be spent? Did Metro Council members go out there? How did that end? Wrap it up in a bow. If either one of you, Edward, do you know what happened, where we stand now?
I can talk about a little bit more about the actual event, and then Chase, if you want to finish up with what happened at City Council. As far as we know, it seems as though not that many City Council people actually attended the event where they were going to tour the camp. And a lot of people were there were from some organizations in town. I don't think they actually ended up even walking through the camp. It ended up being more of a circle discussion with about, I think, low teens. I want to say 13 or 14 people, simply discussing. And I don't think that they actually had the opportunity or attempted maybe to speak to anyone at the camp before the night before, when I was able to talk to everyone and just do general outreach and privately discuss that the event was happening. A few people were interested in speaking, but a few of them were very upset that it was actually happening at all. Chase?
Yeah, Chase, is the $1.9 million going to be spent on cameras and bobcats?
So the bill, as it stands, has been deferred. It has not been passed. There have been some removals that have happened since the first reading. There's no longer the bobcat. The bobcat stipend in the bill. There are still cameras, last I heard. And we'll see how that plays out. We're seeing council, kind of continually refining their approach to this problem, especially with some changes that are happening throughout the metro government. The last thing we'll say is that part of this tour that they wanted to do, the way that we're approaching these issues is always from a lens of people on the outside, and sometimes that can make it seem as though we're demonizing who are experiencing these things. So we're pro conversations between folks with experience and folks in housing. We think that being proximate to people who are experiencing homelessness is important. But not when you are doing it in a manner that's more damaging than it is helpful.
Yeah. Okay, all right, we're going to take a break. We have a bunch of calls, so we'll start taking calls when we come back. If you want to join the conversation, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.